Hi everyone, this is Kang Hee-nuk, professor of University of Gyeonggi, Seoul, Korea. I'm very glad to participate in this, the first UNESCO International Center for Documentary Heritage's webinar named Documentary Heritage. My major is archaeology of Eurasia and Silk Road, so I'm very happy to have this chance to give you a talk about my latest work and my opinion about the Silk Road in the opinion from the Korean archaeologist. So my talk named Archaeological Perspectives on the Earliest Relation of Korean Peninsula with Silk Road and Eurasian Steppe. Yeah, you may be wonder that I named not only Silk Road but also Eurasian Steppe. Yes, many people think about the Silk Road just about the caravan route from Xi'an until the Rome. But Silk Road based on the 5,000 years of the Eurasian steppe route. People, nomadic people, lived on the Eurasian steppe from the about the 35th century BCE, and that was the base on the Silk Road. So I wanna extend the meaning and significance of the early relationship with Silk Road to Korea, not on before the Han Dynasty, and in this talk I will focus on the 4th century to 4th century BCE when the Sakha people from Kazakhstan intrude into the North Korea, North China, and further Manchuria and China. From a geographical perspective, it seems only natural that ancient Korea would have had, in several aspects, considerable interaction with and influence from the region to its north and the steppe and Silk Road. However, actual access for most people to that region has been completely blocked since before 1990s. Even if this barrier were all at once to disappear, a practical study on this subject requires considerable effort and seems unlikely to take place soon. It's because there's very few specialists to understand the Russian archaeology in Korea, and compared to Korean Peninsula, Silk Road region and Eurasia is too widely. So up to now, most of the Korean archaeologists and historians did not study and not so acquaintance of this kind of situation in Silk Road. In this talk, I aim to provide evidence based on archaeological findings that demonstrate the actual interchange between the Korean Peninsula and the northern Eurasian steppe region in the early Silk Road. It is worthwhile to mention that the 4th century BCE has special meaning in East Asian history. At the time, Sakha culture was flowing rapidly to the Great Wall region of China, and in Manchuria, Gojoseon, or ancient Joseon, went through a drastic social transformation from networking migratory lifestyles to territorialism. I will examine not only how the spread of Sakha culture from Central Asia progressed into the formation of early Shunnu, but also how it spread into the Northern nomad culture during the early Silla period. Throughout, I will re-examine the possibility of early relationship of Silk Road and Korea before Han Dynasty. And next chapter is about the Sakha culture of Central Asia and Northern China. First of all, let me introduce my latest investigation on Sakha culture in Kazakhstan and Silk Road within about 5 years. From 1915 up to now, I and the Research Institute of Cultural Heritage in Korea conducted several projects on the Silk Road and the archaeology of Kazakhstan. The Research Institute of Cultural Heritage annually carry out the several archaeological excavation, and my project with institution is studied the previous excavated documented material, because for archaeologists not only excavation also important to figure out what has been excavated, because in the Soviet era most of the significant findings and discovery was not well known for another nation like Korea or the Western stage. So I focused out on these material that found in these the blocked time beyond the Iron Curtain. So let's see. The first is the golden culture of Kazakhstan. This is the catalog of the gold material, the masterpiece of the Kazakhstan Sakha cultures, published in 1917. In this volume, we showed up and introduced most of the masterpiece from E.C. Goldman, Shillikti, and so many the newly founded gold material from Sakha. It strongly shows that the characteristic of Sakha golden culture and the finding from the Sakha kurgans. And the right one is the catalog for the exhibition of the Kazakhstan in the land of gold men. It was hosted with the helping from the Kazakhstan government. There was a gold man from Ishik were exhibited in Korea, and subsequently there was many articles from me and another specialist about the significance of the Kazakhstan Sakha culture. And next, as the name is the Shungnu, the Art of an Empire, published in 2020 in 2 languages, in Mongol and Shungnu. By the way, the Kazakhstan catalog was published in 3 languages, Russian, Kazakh, and Korean, with the English resume. All these ones you can download by free from the site of the Research Institute of Cultural Heritage of Korea. And the Shungnu catalog show the recent discovery from the Mongol and their excavation of noble tombs and kurgan. There were so many Scythian style, animal style, and sometimes from Persian carpet and Chinese utensil, and some kind of the pottery who are related from the Manchuria. And the next is the encyclopedia. Encyclopedia of the Silk Road of the Eastern Turkestan or Xinjiang. We compiled most of significant sites, artifacts, and researchers who are concerned about the Silk Road. It consists of more than 10,000. It consists with more than 1,000 pages. So I could speak that we have gathered almost the latest discovery from the Xinjiang of China. And final, my corporate work is translation. The late Karl Baipakov wrote a colossal book named The Great Silk Road of Kazakhstan, which are published in 2007. And I privately asked him to revise that book for translation, and he agreed. And Professor Karl Baipakov, he sent us many revision of his late book, the late book, and he have changed many the illustrations and photos with the newly the upgraded. And I and my translator worked on his text, and we gave our most effort to understand the contemporary circumstance of Chikro study in Kazakhstan. So you can download it from the site. So like this, everybody in Korea now and in some degree can reach out the latest Sakha cultures. And furthermore, I have also investigated some materials from the Sakha culture during preparing the gold culture of Kazakhstan in 2016 and 17. We can investigate with the help of the Kazakhstan, the museum in Almaty and Nur Sultan. We can investigate most of the significant gold materials from Issyk Kurgan in Almaty. You may know this the famous the goldman of Issyk, which was excavated in the 1970. And while during the investigation, I strongly found the similarity of the Sakha gold material with Ordos Plateau and Beijing regions nomad. So I suggest that there should be the great influx of Sakha gold culture to East Asia via Great Wall region. So this is the main theme of my talk: how the Sakha culture of Central Asia intrude the northern China and where they reach out. I think they reach out to Korean Peninsula. Okay, let's start in detail. Sakha culture refers to the group of people who built Great Burial Mound and create gold relics based on the nomadic economy of Central Asia centered in Kazakhstan. In other words, Sakha is a separate steppe culture, quite distinct from the steppe culture of Siberia, which is regarded as part of the Scytho-Siberian world. Let's see. You see the Beshatyr Kurgan, the one of the biggest Sakha Kurgan in the Semirechye or Jetisu regions, and that was excavated in the 1950s and 60s. And so, so far, in some degree, in Korea, the most the famous kurgan of Eurasia was Bajirik in the Altai region. But the core region of that kurgan culture was not in the Altai, but in the Jetisu, the Semirechye. So, many people confused the Scytho-Siberian culture of the Eurasian steppe with the Kazakhstan of the Sakha culture of the Kazakhstan. Yeah, wholly they lived on nomad culture, but art and the way of living and the material culture differ from each other. So I'm now just concentrating just only the Sakha culture of the Kazakhstan. In terms of Eurasian archaeology, Sakha culture is characterized by its gold and its burial mound in Central Asia between the 8th and 3rd century BCE. In particular, the period between the 6th and the 3rd century BCE is known to be the golden age of Sakha culture, with the widespread use of gold and building of the kurgan. Each mound built of piled stone with an interior wooden chamber tomb. Sakha culture primarily characterized by this stone mound tomb is distributed particularly in the Jetisu region of western Kazakhstan. This results in the creation of Sakha-style golden animal ornament. Some key examples are the famous Isi burial mound of Golden Man, as well as Bishatir, Shilitir burial mound, and recently they also found another examples of the Golden Man from Ilexaj and some like that, another ones. With this explanation, we can see that the main Saka culture was a nomadic culture that was dispersed throughout Central Asia around 800 to 300 BCE. However, the Saka culture marked a major change in the 1st century BCE. Around the time, the Kazakhstan Saka style of gold artifact penetrated throughout the Turpan Basin of Xinjiang and spread widely in the Great Wall region of North China. Then, on the highland of Yunnan and Sichuan and through Tibet. You can see this map, and this map show up their spread over the another region. So the intrusion could be the earliest Silk Road. So the first evidence of Saka's intrusion to east should be neighbored Xinjiang region. So let's see, the Turfan region found some gold materials. They were decorated by the fantastic animal style, and they are very similar to Pajirik and so Saka culture. Yes, Turpan Basin was a kind of the corridor to Eastern Asia, and the Saka influx was reached out to the Gansu corridor, and finally there was another significant and very famous material from the Majawian tombs of Shirong culture. Yes, before that, let's take a look about the intrusion of Saka culture. You see the Saka style bronze in the Altai, the Pajirik and the Tuba, but it's not so significant. The mainstream should be the Turfan Basin. Yes, and surprisingly, there was another route of the Saka bronze, Saka gold. It reached out to southwestern part of China, Yunnan and Sichuan, and so far they went to the East Chinese Sea regions. So we call it, this is also an ancient tea route, and in this mountainous region, in Tibet and Western Yunnan, you can find also another examples of this kind of Saka style. Yes, Saka style gold was a huge phenomenon at the time. So you see the Saka kurgans in the Xinjiang region and all the gold ornament. Okay, let's go back to their eastern intrusion in the Gansu province of China. The influx of Saka style culture reached to the Gansu corridor and is well reflected on the Majawian tomb of the Shirong culture. The ornament and gilt belt were with highly exaggerated animals excavated from this site, and this can be seen to influenced by Saka style. So you see, there are just significance the gold man from Majawian. You can see the comparison of the Isi gold man and the Majawian gold man. Yes, they are very similar each other, but there's some differences. In the Majawian people, he ride on the chariot, and there was many Chinese vessels and another ornament like jade. Anyway, they share the same tradition of the gold belt. No other people symbolize their status by the gold belt, and so this show up the Majawian people are strongly related with the Saka people. Okay, let's go further to the east. The eastward spreading Saka culture was also found on the famous Ordos Plateau. And some examples are like Hulustai and Yulongtai, some site. And it is worth mentioning that a golden diadem was discovered in the site of Aluchaidang, and nothing like it can be found in the western region of Saka culture. Surprisingly, Saka culture, Saka people, didn't wear gold crown. they just wear the high peaked hat. Yeah, because they are nomad people, so they cannot wear the heavy gold crown. But in Ordos Plateau, people start to wear the hair gold ornament. It means that from the differences of the geographical situation, the nomad culture has changed. Yes, that's Silk Road. Silk Road always assimilated, and they also adapted to another geographical and social circumstance. I suggest that there was a sudden social integration of the nomads and in the 4th century, extending to the border of China into the Ordos region through a sudden expansion. And okay, let's go further until to the Beijing, the capital of China. The eastward expansion of Saka culture reached as far as the Yanshan mountain region around Beijing. In the 4th century, there was a Chinese warring state Yan, dynasty Yan existed. In the royal tombs garden of the Yanshan, the capital of the dynasty Yan, there was a tomb named Xinzhuang Tou. In the number 30th tomb of Xinzhuang Tou, archaeologists excavate a very fluent and there was a big discovery of the gold ornament. And in that cemetery, we excavated the nomadic culture and the Saka style bronze, like you see, like this one. There was, if we just take a look without any information, we might think that this all was found and made in this Kazakhstan or in the Altai region. Yeah, it's the typical Saka culture. They were found in the Beijing region, in the center of Dynasty Yan. It means there was a strong influx of the Saka culture. Okay, and another question, who made this? It just import or Chinese made? My answer is that there should be the Chinese craft also engaged in making this kind of Saka style gold, because the back side of these ornament there was a Chinese hieroglyphs, Chinese characters written about the amount and the grams of these materials. So it's very natural that Chinese craftsmen also engaged in Saka style bronze, and it's very important to understand the extension of Silk Road, because the craftsmen learned how the Saka style bronze gold make, and then craftsmen could migrate and they could work in various regions. Like this in Dynasty Han, in the whole China, Saka style, animal style have became popular from southern China until the Beijing, and everywhere you can find this Saka style bronze and gold material in the Chinese noble tombs. So this also is another reason for the extension of the earliest Silk Road. Okay, that's all for the Chinese the intrusion until the China. In the next chapter, I will talk about the their intrusion to Korean peninsula. And let's talk about the influence of Sakha culture to Korea. I mean, in the early Silla. As we talked about above, in the 4th century, a drastic cultural transformation swept through the Great Wall region of China with the rise of early Xiongnu and Sakha's intrusion. The historical background of this transformation can be found in the territorial governance process in such projects as the building of the Great Wall during the Warring State period of China. Between the 4th and 2nd century BCE, the movement of nomadic people living around the Great Wall triggered massive cultural changes in the surrounding areas, as the cultural characteristics widely distributed around the Great Wall region in the 4th century BCE were very different from those of previous periods. It is clear that this was related to the influx of the widespread Sakha culture of Central Asia, not only the Great Wall region, but also the further Manchuria and China. So let's talk about some materials. These are the dragon-shaped gold buckle found from Pyongyang of North Korea, and another one from Silk Road, from Fortress Yanqi of Xinjiang. And then another one, there was another Dalian from Liaoning and southern part of the China. Yes, with the participation of gold craftsmen from China, the Sakha style became more and popular. So the prestige material of Sakha gold buckle reached out to North Korea. But another striking case of steppe culture influence to South Korea is the animal style bronze from the wooden coffin tombs at Tapdong, Gyeongju of Korea. Gyeongju is the capital of the Silla. In this tomb were found iron weaponry, bronze horse equipment, a Chinese mirror, and a bronze belt hook in a tiger-shaped style. Yeah, typically we date that from 2nd to 1st century BCE. And this, as you see, the tiger-style belt hook, identical to the Tapdong example, can be traced to the belt hook from Qingshui Liaoping tombs from Gansu corridor, where the Majawian and Shirong culture thrived. In addition, a horse girder featuring a colored animal from Tapdong is identical to the one from Xinjiang-to, and not only Xinjiang-to, also found from the Mongolia and another in the northern region of China. As evidence, this nomad style or Sakha style artifact from the early Silla period, or we call it Jinhan, the same meaning of the Korean peninsula, show consistent relevance to those found in the Great Wall region of China around the 4th century BCE. This period coincides with the date of which Sakha style culture thrived in the northern region of the Great Wall. The influx of Sakha culture into the Korean peninsula was triggered during the Warring State period by the expansion of the Yuan dynasty, and furthermore, the construction of the Great Wall in the Qin and Han period. This is also precisely related to the building of the Great Wall and another Chinese force to the nomad people. And the Great Wall means to mark their territory during the Warring State area. So the steppe, when they built the Great Wall, the steppe nomad people and Chinese, they should fight each other because there was a significant line, a borderline. So after that, the expansion of China and conflict caused nomad tribes to endure stress, and subsequently some of them were assimilated and some of them flew to other regions. in the 2 and 4th century BCE. So some could float into Korea. So I took a glimpse our historical record and found very interesting phrase. Historical records show that one group undergoing this migration or flight or exile had to Jinhan statelet in the southeastern part of Korea over the early Silla, as shown below. Some old men of Jinhan, former Silla, state that they immigrated to avoid compulsory labor on the Great War. Their language is similar not only to that of the dynasty Yenenji, but also with Jin, written by Qinshou Sanguoji. The text on Jinan in Sanguoji, or record of the three kingdoms, the most essential history record on which one can base a study of ancient Korean history, shows that the formation of early Silla include the migration of nomadic people from northern China. The credibility of this record is very high. It's one of the base Bible for ancient Korean history. So, and after that text, he described many vocabularies material that are different from Korean language. So I think that this credibility of this record is very high. I want to emphasize the wide expansion of Sakha culture from Central Asia, mainly the eastern part of Kazakhstan, to Xinjiang and the Great Wall area of China during the 4th, 2nd century BCE were deeply influential in this period. The Great Chinese warring state built the Great Wall to enforce territorial governance. Subsequently, those conflict with such northern people, as recorded Lin Hu, Donghu, Lo Fan, Shilu, and early Shungnu. All of these were characterized by their Sakha style material cultures. At Xinjiang-tou, located in Yanshe-tou, had yielded plenty of Sakha style ornament. Yeah, in this material, also you can find a Eurofoid figure with a pig-topped head. Pig-topped head was as a symbol for Sakha people. We could meet this kind of people with pig-top head from Persepolis until Beijing. It's amazingly, they has the share, the one style of the hairstyle, I mean the head. So this is also a distinguishing feature of the Sakha people. And it's worth mentioning that similar representation of head also found in Silla. Yeah, actually, we don't have any direct evidence of the correlation of Shilla's pig-topped head with this kind of the Sakha pig-topped head. But the further study could trace the exact evidence. So I think that in this time it's just kind of the hypothesis. Similarly, in the area of Beijing, the Yan dynasty played an intermediary role between the nomadic people and the people of the Korean peninsula. This means that the sentence quote above from the Sanguoji is verifiable. Furthermore, this kind of influx strongly implies the extension of pre-Han period Silk Road to Korea. When you take into consideration that there was an influx of steppe culture from the Great Wall region before Silla, then we can re-examine the previous discussed idea of that Silla has extensive relations with an influence from Eurasia, which has been a hot potato in Korean archaeology and ancient history for almost a century, ever since the discovery of the stone-built Kurgan with its wooden chamber tomb in Gyeongju in 1921. Yes, there was 100 years ago, there was a excavated Geumgwanchong, the Golden Crown tomb, exactly 100 years ago. And that triggered the hypothesis of the Shilla's origin from Eurasian steppe. This is because the stone kurgan suddenly appeared in the 4th century CE, remained for nearly 2 centuries, and then abruptly disappeared. It has never been discovered in other places throughout Korea. Such coffins are found only in the Gyeongju region and are unlike the other Tamli of Goguryeo, Baekje, Gaya. Nevertheless, the international archaeological community has focused on the wooden chamber tombs and inferred the relationship between the two regions in discussions has been kept intentionally ambiguous due to the lack of researchers who can authoritatively examine and coordinate the archaeology of two regions. As you see, the similarity of the construction of tomb is significant, and also the exterior view is also shared. They also share, and there are another many evidence of the Shilla's relation with the steppe, like the flying horse of the Pajari culture and Shilla. And there's a golden sword and scabbard from Gerimno Gyeongju has the share, the same one from the Kazakhstan, the Boroboye, Kazakhstan, and the same the golden sword scabbard was found from the Gizil mirror from the Xinjiang. So obviously, this Gerimno found gold sword was imported, maybe donated. I think that it is so precious, so they cannot trade. There should be a diplomatic relation. Yeah, there's so many unsolved problem in this matter. And another is like this kind of deformed head of skulls of Silla and Hans. And gold crown similarity. Yes, the similarity, yes, similarity. But it doesn't mean some kind of the great migration. So there was no any significant evidence of the great migration. But every the features of gold Silla show up. They are strong, likeness and maybe some kind of the willingness to identify as the steppe peoples. Yes. But there was no any previous evidence. So people just has been in questions, and there's no any the actual answers. But if we take into consideration that there was the earlier evidence of the Silla and steppe and Silk Road, maybe we can reach closer to the answer. Since the 4th century CE, a huge cultural change in Russia, also known as the Great Migration period, was represented by the Hans or Shungnu, and subsequently Silla also recognized this phenomenon. As you see, there was so many nations who had self-confidence of the descendant of Shungnu. Silla, Eftal, about so many nations, about more than 15 states in the Great Migration period had self-confidence of the descendant of Shungnu. And Silla also showed up their strong the self-confidence of Shungnu. So all of these things is not a coincidence. All this was intended by the hegemony of the Silla people. So all this period has concerned with the rising of new governance in Silla. Silla, when this phenomenon has recognized, there was a new system of governance. We call it Maritgan. Maritgan means just kind of just king, and Nemul, king, Nemul Maritgan, and there was of the Kim clan established of hereditary monarchy. Until that, there was the three lineage had succeeded in sequence, but from Nemulmarikkan, only Kim clan monopolized all this monarchy and identifying their lineage as being from Xiongnu. And they liked import many this kind of steppe cultures, imported exotic goods. The significance of the Eurasian style kurgan and many exotic elements of Silla lie in their long interrelationship with the early Silla, and the rise of Xiongnu influenced. So, the Shilla's self-confidence from the descendant of the steppe was not invented at that Nemulmarikkan period. There was some group or maybe some people who had a strong relationship with the early Silk Road from Jinan period. And in the Nemulmarikkan period, to establish their own strong monarchy, Kim clan made use of this kind of the new hegemony ideas and ideology. So this is the why Silla kept going. Their strong self-confidence of the steppe culture, concerned with their political situation. But the origin of this kind of steppe relationship started from the early Silla period. And so earlier, about 400 years from the foundation of Nemulmarikkan. So I explained how the early Silk Road had appeared in Korea. My talk emphasized that a cultural comparison between Korea and other regions must be performed from a cultural conversation perspective, and the study of the Silk Road in the 21st century must stem from a mindset open to various cultures. I expect that this study can re-establish the relationship between Korea and the Silk Road in terms of cultural interchange between Eurasia and the Korean Peninsula through archaeological analysis of the cultural interchange between the Korean Peninsula and the Silk Road region and steppe. This study can present a model for archaeological communication between East Asia and Eurasia and reveal the concept of the Silk Road, including in it the relationship between the Korean Peninsula and Northern Eurasia from a cultural exchange perspective. Finally, I hope that my intent to balance and extend our focus beyond the mainland of China and perspective on documentary heritage and also documentary materials on archaeology. And this could help us make some analysis and investigation beyond the borderlines. And that will benefit the conditions of Asian archaeology and international concerns for the documentary heritage on Silk Road. Thank you for your attention.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and good afternoon. I'm so pleased and honored to speak today on the webinar, the International Center Documentary Heritage 2021, with the title, The Significance of Documentary Heritage Along the Silk Road. My name is Hee-Soo Lee, Emeritus Professor of Cultural Anthropology, Hanyang University, Korea. Through UNESCO initiated program in 1992, growing awareness in preserving and accessing the documentary heritage in various parts of the world has enhanced. However, by war and social conflict, as well as a lack of resources, particularly during the COVID-19 crisis, and its negative impacts, libraries, archives, and museums have suffered seriously all over the globe. One of the essential messages from the pandemic was that we needed to further strengthen the resilience of memory institutions in the face of future crises. In this sense, I would like to emphasize on the collective duty of UNESCO ICDH to safeguard documentary heritage based on collective history, culture, and identity through its Memory of the World program. I hope today's webinar could be a meaningful step forward to implement the noble mission. At the present moment, a lot of documentary heritage, including ancient manuscript of historic value along the Silk Road, have been listed on the UNESCO Memory of the World Register. The work of discovering, preserving, and restoring data are essential part of ICDH mission. At the same time, through research, analysis, and comparison of existing non-documentary data, it is also more important to reveal close mutual confluence and cultural exchanges between countries through the Silk Road to make documentary heritages a solid infrastructure for future cooperation. In other words, it means efforts to find, preserve, and to prepare a platform for more wide range of communication and cooperation through maximizing common cultural heritage by projecting it into daily life through the use of numerous documents and cultural contents. Taking this opportunity today, I'd like to introduce 3 essential functions of documentary heritage along the Silk Road. The first, multinational joint archive excavation. The Silk Road, stretching from Mediterranean Sea all the way to the Korean Peninsula and Japan, connected society across Eurasia. In recent years, thanks to advances made by comparative approaches and archaeological findings, great progress has been made in the study of historical cross-cultural contacts and trading relations among Eurasian society through the Silk Road network. This has allowed it for a new perspective on the long-distance cross-cultural relationship in Afro-Eurasia. Societies as distant as Korea and West Asia were in contact through long-distance trade routes, both over land and sea, long before the advent of Islam. Written references are few and far between, but documentation and archaeological excavation are sufficient to prove the existence of substantial commerce between Korea and West Asia. For example, Samguk Sagi, the official chronicle of the Three Kingdom era compiled 1145, provide a detailed account of commercial items that were sold by Muslim merchants and widely used in Silla society. Moreover, recent academic attention to Kushname, a medieval Persian epic written in the early 12th century, based on earlier orally transmitted tale, opened a new phase of study of historical and cultural relations between Iran and Korea along the Silk Road. The significance of Kushname as a source of ancient Korea-China-Iran relations along the Silk Road. The book is written by Hakim Iranshan Abi Khair in early 12th century. Many scholars argue that Bashila, described in Kushname, can be identified with the Silla kingdom of ancient Korea for many reasons. With the advent of Islam, references to Korea found in 23 Islamic sources written between 9th and 16th centuries by 18 Muslim scholars, including Ibn Khordadbi, Sulaiman at-Tajir, is 9th century scholars, and Masudi of 10th century, suggested Muslims' influence had already reached in Korean peninsula by that time. Before the discovery of Kushname, however, no document or epic had been found that described ancient relation between Iran and Silla to such a detailed manner. In this sense, an in-depth study of Kushname focusing on its description of Basila will contribute to expanding our understanding of pre-modern relations between West Asia and Korea along the Silk Road, because both historical events and mythological belief of ancient Persia are incorporated in Kushname. We need more research to what extent we can accept description within Kushname to be reliable historical evidence. Kushname manuscripts, as you said in the image, contain historical facts and traditional Persian legend, sometimes mingled with each other. Based on Jalal Martini's famous Iranian scholars reprinted the version of Kushname in 1998, half of the book cover many aspects of Silla, such as general societal condition, China-Iran Silla relation, military cooperation, Iranian settlement in Silla society, the marriage of Iranian prince with the Silla princess, and the excellent living conditions of Silla. Wow, surprising descriptions we can find from the manuscript. Islamic sources reveal that the collapse of the Sassanid dynasty in the 7th century, many Persian royal families and artisans escaped to the East Asian countries, including China and the Korean peninsula. History preserves no account of what exactly happened to them or of their destinies, except in a few Chinese chronicles. Upon residing in Silla of Korea, the group of Persian royal families contributed greatly to Silla society, especially as they fought against the Chinese troops to help the Korean king. After coming back, residing in Korea, their home in Persian country, the Persian royal families described the beautiful Silla people and their society in written records. The book is Kushname. And it was handed down from generation to generation in the form of separate epic tales until the 11th century, when an Iranian scholar, Iran Shah, compiled the oral epic into written document. The original manuscripts are now possessed by British Library at the book number OR 2780. Kushname now can be helpful in reconstructing the historical relation between Iran and Korea and Silk Road conditions in the mostly 7th or 8th centuries. Of course, the Kushname is primarily the oral tradition following the Shahnameh style, most famous Iranian epic, very close each other. And it was later compiled in the form of manuscripts from the oral tradition. However, because it seems that some historical events are associated with the mythological belief of ancient Persia. In this context, Iranian Prince Abidin in Kushnameh seems closely associated with the fall of Sasanian dynasty. Therefore, it is vital to extract historical facts from the epic passage of Kushnameh as well as Shahnameh, which is regarded as meaningful source for Iranian history. Scholars in Korea, Iran, and China and US began to research this rare document, which deals substantially with ancient Silla of Korean Peninsula. Ongoing studies analyze the specific factors in changing historical context that affected these Silk Road societies and the interrelationship, as well as the transfer of technologies and ideas that connect West Asia to East Asia. Therefore, Silk Road studies, along with the ongoing art history, archaeology, and intangible cultural heritage studies, also seems to be a very important task to discover new documentary heritage. Furthermore, it will be possible to reveal the new common denominator or interrelationship of Silk Road through comparative analysis of these discovered document or manuscript. The historical relations between Far East and Far West Silk Road must be supported by first-hand materials and other essential historical references in Persian and Arabic languages. Of course, I know a little bit, it's my specific field of researches. In this sense, the newly discovered Persian epic Kushnameh and other many Persian manuscripts that contain informative contents and description on Silla West Asia relation should be the pivotal source material for further Silk Road studies. Now is direct contact between 9th and 16th century. This document include the writing from 18 Muslim scholars. Ibn Khordadbeh was the first Arab scholars who chronicled Muslim settlement in Korea during the unified period. Until now, joint research team Korea, Iran successfully has categorized and analyzed more than 30 different manuscripts written Arabic and Persian languages to show the historical encounter between Korea and West Asia along the Silk Road. The book published last year by the institution of UNESCO, ICAS, International Institute of Central Asian Studies, based in Samarkand. Now you can see the world map by Idris of the 12th century. You can see China and big land, and then Al-Hind, India. The Idris described the Korea is Al-Silla, 6 island, because they come to Korea through maritime Silk Road, not through the land route from China. This is very interesting. As you know, very well-known world map of Al-Idris is early 12th century, an outstanding Muslim geographer of the medieval age. He completed the geographical book in which he designed the most accurate world map in medieval age, and interestingly described the Silla as Korea, consisting of 6 islands. This, I think, the almost first world map mentioned Korea. Till now, we found 23 the different Arabic sources, recently 32 the Arabic and Persian sources from Iranian archive and the documentary offices and libraries. You can see some of the original materials which mention Silla and Korean Peninsula, and Silla is a Central Asian or West Asian countries, the relations along the Silk Road. Just I would like to introduce one passage of the book by the, I think, by Dimashqi or even Kurdadevi. A similar description we can find on the Silla of the Korean Peninsula. There is a country called the Silla consisting of 6 big islands. Despite the very difficult living conditions, no one wanted to leave this country due to the beauty of the natural scenery. Ptolemy and others said, in this sea, the island is called Silla and have types of ruby and substance and is full of inhabited, and say that it rarely happened that someone entered the island and then lived there because the air is very healthy and has good water and have beautiful people and good things. Most of the Arabic sources describe the Silla of Korean Peninsula as a kind of paradise and utopia. And this is very interesting. Now, Kushname, you can see some part of Arabic sources that mention the above mentioned stories. Here is the Arabic and Persian manuscript on Korea Silla, Silla West Asian relations along the Silk Road. Some 2 sentences, 3 sentences, the short and long, the comparing to these of 32 different type of Persian or Arabic original manuscript describing the Silla and the interrelation between Silla and Central Asia and West Asia along the Silk Road is many parts. In this sense, Kushname is more than 500 pages on the Silla. They give the plentiful information of social conditions, so weather, way of thinking, philosophy, and the tradition and custom, the hunting materials, and so on. Also, the love stories between Persian prince and the Korean princess. It's important to find new documentary heritage along the Silk Road through the joint research team. This is one of the best example recently found, discovered, published, and researched. My second argument is, as a task of ICTH, is a reinterpretation of already existing documentary heritage to collect and categorize is not so enough. So through in-depth researches and reinterpretation and re-evaluation, we should maximize the forgotten contents into real story and extend commercializing the beautiful cultural contents and performing art material. This is my second point. In the Samguk Sagi, well-known Korean chronicles, there were items on the list of foreign trade products, and then did not know the exact meaning of kushu and tapdung on the Samguk Sagi. However, through joint researches and the reinterpretation of the document among different part of scholars, it was found that it meant carpet. Gusu and tapdung means the carpet in ancient time. As a result, trade and exchange between Silla and Iran through the Silk Road could be confirmed, because at that time the Korean society didn't have any manufacturing technology of carpets, also the coloring. So this means the carpets in Korean society should be 100% direct import from the market or factory of the Persian carpet. Also, it may be hard to believe such an argument that the 15th century Muslim leader at the official court ceremonies recited verses from Quran as he wishes the Korean king's long life and prosperous nation. Interesting story. Also, there was a big mosque in medieval Korea in the maybe 13th and 14th century. These are surprising stories. Lunar calendar system in contemporary Korean society was directly influenced by Islamic astronomy and calendar science in early 15th century. All these facts are true, are clearly mentioned in official Korean chronicles named Joseon Wangjo Shillok. For a long time, it classified, categorized as well preserved, but then nobody touched the real essence of the chronicles through reinterpretation or re-evaluation. This is the point. The ICTH's one of the important mission is to reinterpret and re-evaluate already accumulated existing written documents into more varied contents to the scholars, to the ordinary peoples, to the contents industry. This is the point what I'm going to say in the second part. As such, the hypothesis or argument that have been difficult to believe in the past are now vivid facts that have been newly discovered through reinterpretation of existing documentary heritage and joint research with experts on the Silk Road studies. Therefore, efforts and support to reinterpret accumulated data through joint researches are as important as to make efforts discovering, preserving, and inheriting documentary heritage. Another example is the soju, the very popular liquor in Korea. Everybody, almost every day, they're drinking soju. The distilled liquor that represented Korea serves as another example. This alcoholic drink in the daily drinking was referred to as aragi in several Korean documents. The word itself is believed to be a transliteration of the word al-Araq for the distilled Arab spirit, this Arabic. Soju was ironically a cultural heritage originally created by Arab society in which the drinking of alcohol is normally forbidden, prohibited. Muslims in the late Korea and early Joseon dynasty in the 14th and 15th century formed their own communities in Korea, where they allowed them to preserve their cultural custom, tradition, and religious ritual. Members of these communities owned their own shops that sold local ethnic Central Asian food called samsa, and even built a mosque called Yegung. This is a Buddhist, this mosque most probably looks like a Buddhist temple in the medieval age in Korea and Japan, Korea and China and Japan. The members of these communities, they owned their ethnic food, they built a mosque like this. Regularly, they were invited to attend the court ceremonies and offered their religious ritual for the prosperity of the king and the country. From time to time, they were invited to official court ceremonies. During the occasion, the Muslim leaders and priests, they recited the Quran and other Islamic song in front of king to praise and pray for his longevity and the country's prosperity. The annals of Joseon dynasty attribute this to the rapid assimilation of foreign culture into Korean society in accordance with Sejong's royal decree. During the medieval era, the great number of Muslims advanced to Korea. Through the Silk Road, high level of Islamic culture was introduced into Korea. Korea was benefited to a great extent by Islamic astronomy, medicine, calendar science, and architecture and weaponry. Another one example is 14th century, the tombstone inscription discovered in Guangzhou in southern city of China. You can see they mention a man named Ramadan, clearly indicate he was from Korea. He was Muslims as merchants and died as Muslims in Guangzhou. So his Muslim fellow buried him Muslim cemetery in Guangzhou. So after 100 years, we could find the tombstone in which clearly mentioned one Korean Muslims in 14th century. So finally, in the 1427, through the royal decree, prohibits any kind of the alien, the foreign custom and ritual. So the old Muslim community suddenly assimilated into the Korean society, and no more document and record find until the 12th century. It means from the accumulated written the documentary heritage, we can find a lot of new historical facts. Not to keep up the sleeping as a sleeping document, we should maximizing the accumulated the documentary heritage through in-depth or joint researches. This is my second point. The Muslims in the time of Korea dynasty formed their own communities where they preserved the full religious identity and maintained the Islamic way of life. Furthermore, they built a mosque. The Muslim leaders were chosen to perform acts of worship in accordance with Islamic law. By this, Muslims country named Korea transmitted to Arab and then to Europe. Now is the globe, the world community is called Korea. We have 대한민국, but it's why from where which way the now Korea known to the country name to Europe and other world communities. In the medieval age, through Muslim merchants during the Korea dynasty, from Korea dynasty, the modern country name Korea transmitted and became widespread all over the world. Third part is reinterpreting and creating documentary heritage to develop various cultural and content material. Through this work, reaching to the goal of sustainably inheriting precious written heritage to the next generation. The global understanding on certain documentary heritage along the Silk Road should be expanded by creating close cultural exchanges and mutual mega synergy through links with intangible cultural heritage of documentary heritage, and then commercializing them into cultural content industry. Moreover, documentary heritage should be used as opportunity to inherit and develop this generation after generation. Among the heritage record, myth and epic poems often contain the collective memory of the members of the time and the long-standing legend. Based on manuscript of Kushname, various works of art and cultural activities were created and performed. Dance play, fairy tales for children, novels, animations, and cartoons already have been produced, while documentaries, dramas, movies, operas, and ballet are being prepared now. It is a good example of expanding the documentary heritage found through Silk Road related joint researches into interesting and creative works of art beyond simply analyzing and preserving them. The various art performance was produced based on documentary heritage. Another interesting example is a new interpretation of the traditional Korean fairy tale, Babo Ondal, Silly Ondal. Quite well-known stories, everybody know it in Korean society. But the Ondal tale originated from the real historical person named Ondal. He died 590. He was very brave and famous general, military general of Goguryeo of 6th century, who married the Princess Pyeonggang of Goguryeo dynasty and won many battles. That is why the family name On belongs to the originally loyal genealogy of the ancient Sogdiana kingdom in Samarkand in modern Uzbekistan. Very interesting stories. If the research result to some extent, it seems necessary to re-evaluate these traditional fairy tales as a common cultural heritage on the Silk Road. So from the written documentary heritage to fairy tale stories, then we can find the commonality among different peoples along the Silk Road. In addition, there is a record that the falcon hunting and the falcon breeding culture in Mongolia and Central Asia were already prevalent on the Korean Peninsula in the late Koryo and Joseon dynasty in Korea. The Korean chronicles show that there was Eungbang, it means a falcon office, under the order of the king of the Joseon dynasty, and finding, raising, and training good hawks nationwide. Another interesting story is Choyong, also a very famous story of Choyong, who appeared in Korean society along the maritime Silk Road as a stranger at the end of 9th century. Choyong is also briefly mentioned in the chronicles called the Samguk Sagi and Samguk Yusa, two famous chronicles in the Silla period. Based on several sentences in the book, more than 300 academic papers have been published so far, and numerous dance, play, and performances are still being conducted. A documentary heritage. One documentary heritage is a representative example of the development of numerous cultural contents and various performing arts. Now, Choyong mask dance was enlisted as masterpieces of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity by UNESCO in 2009. So ICDA's mission, of course, to find very valuable and forgotten new documentary and written record, chronicles, and annals scattered all of the Silk Road countries. This is the basic mission, of course. Second things, through in-depth researches and re-interpretation and the re-evaluation of already accumulated written documents. So we need to find out the new interpretation into academic society as well as the ordinary peoples and commercialize for the more sustainable, what they call continuation from generation to generations. As conclusion, research on Central Asia and Silk Road and preservation of cultural heritage have so far tended to focus on intangible cultural heritage based on somewhat nomadic traditions. Now is the time to pay more attention to documentary heritage discovery and comparative research connecting multinational Silk Road scholars. This is the background of the establishment of ICDH, I think. Of course, new discovery, preservation, and transmission of documentary heritage to next generation are, of course, important. at the same time analyzing and decoding existing and classified data to find the common cultural elements among the Silk Road countries and ethnic groups, and to reveal mutual exchanges and confluences are equally important. Furthermore, as in the case of Kushname research, the value of documentary heritage will be more meaningful if it contributes to the production and spread of various cultural contents and art through decoded and known contents. Finally, through project linking documentary heritage with the intangible cultural heritage, we look forward to reflecting on Silk Road Spirit, which was the way for human communication and dialogue of peace, and driving the new future of 21st century human community in conflicts and competition. It's ICDH slow, I think. Thank you very much. Thank you for your listening. Bye.